Morning, Glory, America. Bonjour, hi, candidates. Hugh, good Wednesday morning to you. It's the morning after Election Day. Eric Schmidt is the nominee in Missouri. That's a giant relief. He's going to win handily, Attorney General Schmidt. And now we have the field all but set. There are 10 key races for the United States Senate, and I always focus on the Senate. Anyone who's listened to this show for years knows. By the way, Kari Lake is about 20,000 votes ahead of Karen Robson. I think Kari Lake has won it. Not quite sure yet. No one's called it. Tudor Dixon is the nominee for governor in Michigan, and Blake Masters, the nominee in Arizona. None of those unexpected. The Kari Lake Karen Robson race is a dead heat statistically, and the polls had that completely wrong again. Do not read the polls. It's sort of like I know Herschel's ahead of Raphael Warnock, and I know the polls show that he's not, and I know that Dr. Oz is ahead of John Fetterman, and the polls show he's way behind. He's not. It's just that they don't know how to poll anymore, and they won't admit it, and they continue to use it because the media is left wing. And they don't want to make it obvious. Look, here is the rundown. I just tweeted this out. I hope you'll do two things to begin this morning. Might be a little bit a while till I get my voice, because up late night following results last night until I finally couldn't see any way to figure out who was going to win in Arizona's governor race. Eric Schmidt had won the Missouri race fairly early, as had Tudor Dixon the Michigan race. There were four big races last night. Michigan governor, and my guy lost. I wanted Kevin Rinke, but I kind of knew that Tudor Dixon was going to win when Donald Trump endorsed her. Really mattered the most to me was Eric Schmidt winning in Missouri. I've got to tell you, we have a safe red seat there, a safe, deep red state that could have been thrown away, and we didn't throw it away because they nominated the strongest, very competent candidate when the Show Me State nominated Eric Schmidt. He's been on the show. He'll be back on the show. So now the field is set, and I want you to do two things for me. One, go follow me on Twitter so you can get all 10 campaigns. The Republicans have 10 key campaigns. All right, that's the key thing for the Senate. 10 key campaigns. Let me run them for you. Blake Masters in Arizona, who won last night. All right, so we need Blake Masters to win in the fall and to defeat Mark Kelly and take that seat away. Joe O'Dea in Colorado. Democrats spent big to try and stop him from getting the nomination, elect a non-electable Rocky Mountain State nominee. Joe O'Dea is very electable. Be a big upset, but he can't upset Michael Bennet. BlakeMasters.com, JoeO'Dea.com. Herschel, of course, needs your small dollar donations in Georgia. Absolutely needs them. TeamHerschel.com. Then we need in North Carolina, TedBudd.com. Now, Congressman Budd is going to be Senator Budd. I'm pretty confident about that one. Up in New Hampshire, they don't vote for a couple more weeks, but it's a lock. Chuck Morse is going to be the nominee. And if you're listening to me in northern New Hampshire via WGAN in Portland or in Nashua or Keene, New Hampshire, where I'm on, I cover the state. I cover the Granite State. Chuck Morse is our best bet to take out Maggie Hassan in the election. So Morse, number 4, Senate.com. Adam Laxalt in Nevada against the invisible senator. Adam Laxalt. J.D. Vance in Ohio. Dr. Oz, and by the way, that's at jdvance.com, Dr. Oz, D-O-C-T-O-R, DrOz.com in Pennsylvania. Tiffany Smiley won last night in Washington State. She's Smiley for Senate.com. And, of course, Ron Johnson in Wisconsin's got to win. Ron Johnson for Senate.com. 10 races. If the Republicans run that board, they have a 6-seat majority, 56 seats in the Senate. And Mitch McConnell will be back as leader. I'm not worried about Marco Rubio in Florida. Marco's going to win. I mean, he's welcome to come on the show and talk about it, but he's going to win. I'm not worried about John Thune in South Dakota. He's going to win. These 10 are competitive. And these 10 include Blake Masters is up against Mark Kelly, a Democrat. Joe O'Dea is up against Michael Bennet, a Democrat. Herschel Walker is up against Raphael Warnock, the Democrat. Chuck Morse will be running against Maggie Hassan, the Democrat. Adam Laxalt is running against Cortez Masto, the invisible senator, Democrat. Tiffany Smiley is running against Patty Murray. In that race, by the way, she was only down, total primary vote was only like 60,000 votes different. In Missouri, you add up the Republicans and they dwarf the Democrats. And so this is the lay of the land. And what matters. They're key. Eli Crane won last night in Arizona. That's great. He's going to make another great veteran addition to the United States Congress. That's just great. But Eric Schmidt was the most important race by far for the country, the future of the country. Had to hold on to that seat because we got to win a net 1, but I want to win a net 5, net 6. And so I go over it again because this is what matters, and I'm probably going to run through this list until you're sick of it. So it'd be just easiest if you go to hughhewitt.com and download the tweet right now. Retweet it for me. BlakeMasters.com, JoeO'Day.com, TeamHerschel.com, TedBudd.com, Morse, the number 4 Senate.com, AdamLaxalt.com, JDVance.com, DrOz.com, SmileyForSenate.com, RonJohnsonForSenate.com. That's not order of importance. That's the order of the states. Blake Masters in Arizona, Joe O'Day in Colorado, Herschel Walker in Georgia, Ted Budd in North Carolina. I think I got that wrong. It's NC, but NH. I was using the abbreviations. Chuck Morse in New Hampshire, Adam Laxalt in Nevada, J.D. Vance in Ohio, Dr. Oz in Pennsylvania, Tiffany Smiley in Washington State, and Ron Johnson in Wisconsin. That's the key, those 10 races. And I hope Peter Thiel gives them all. Peter Thiel gives $100 million to each of those races. Sets up an independent expenditure committee. If you're listening, Peter, I'm just saying, give $1 billion away and win the country. It matters. We got to stop these crazy judges. Yes, we got to fix tax policy. We can fix that. We're going to have the House of Representatives in any event. And great candidates winning all across the United States last night. Republicans, low end, they're going to pick up 10. High end, they could pick up 40. Depends on how badly Joe Biden screws up and what happens with inflation. And right now, the misery index, I think it's baked in. The House has won. Democrats are giving up. They're retiring in droves. They're running away. And they should, because redistricting plus the misery index means a Republican wave in the House. Senate is trickier. Got to have good candidates. These are all very, very good candidates. I'm not promoting to anyone who's not competitive. There are a few other Republicans on a few other ballots. They're not competitive. These are the people who matter. These are the people that you got to have. And by the way, I want to play for you again what the Republicans are dealing with. Herschel Walker came under racist attack by a guy named Meistel with the white hair on MSNBC talking to Tiffany Cross. Racist attack. Can we play that cut number 1 from 3 nights ago?
Yeah, first of all, I just want to thank the GOP for nominating a running back from Dallas to run in Georgia and a TV doctor from New Jersey to run in Pennsylvania. Thank you guys, right?
Yes.
But yes, it's going to be a close election in Georgia because Walker
has the backing. I want you to listen very closely to what he says next, all right? A running back from Dallas. No, he's not. He's a Georgia. I mean, that just insults Georgia voters. He is the epitome of Georgia football. Everybody knows Herschel is Georgia football. And so this guy may not know that, a running back from Dallas. He's amusing Tiffany Cross and the half dozen people who are watching this MSNBC show. But what comes next is naked racism, okay? Play it from the start again. Cut number 1.
Yeah, first of all, I just want to thank the GOP for nominating a running back from Dallas to run in Georgia and a TV doctor from New Jersey to run in Pennsylvania. Thank you guys, right?
Yes.
But yes, it's going to be a close election in Georgia because Walker has the backing of the Republicans. Now you ask, why are Republicans backing this man who's so clearly unintelligent, who so clearly doesn't have independent thoughts? But that's actually the reason. Walker's going to do what he's told. And that's what Republicans like. That's what Republicans want from their Negroes, to do.
All right, stop right there. Okay,
told.
Racist alert. Right, that's just a racist alert. Herschel responds on the same day, cut number 2.
Good morning. A lot of people have been asking me to say something about the man on MSNBC that called me the N-word. Here's what I got to say about that. Shame on MSNBC and shame on him. I'm going to pray for both of them because they need Jesus. When I saw what he said, it reminded me of the differences between myself and my opponents. Senator Warnock and the left-wing crazy that believe America is fundamentally a bad country full of racist people. They want to divide us, turn us against each other. We have our problems, but we can solve them together. This is a good country, full of good people. With God's help.
Bonjour, hi, Canada. Hugh Hewitt from Studio North. Winterfell has fallen as Genghis Khan has arrived. So I'm just going to stay in my studio for 2 consecutive days as the 3-year-old rampages through our main retreat. I am joined by Senator James Lankford, who is, of course, the senator from Oklahoma. He has won his nomination to, again, win handily in the fall. But, Senator, I want to talk to you about reconciliation. But at first, I want to start with Eric Schmidt won last night in Missouri. Blake Masters won last night in Arizona. Seems to me the field is pretty much set. New Hampshire hadn't voted yet, but we've got a lineup here. And good morning to you. I don't want to cut you up before I go right there. I hope you're feeling well this morning.
I am actually. I'm doing well. Hope you're doing well also, even though
I
a
am.
3-year-old's rampaging through your place.
Well, I think you've got some of those on your own ticket, but when you're a grandfather, I just can't keep up with them. Senator, we got Blake Masters in Arizona, Joe O'Dea in Colorado, Herschel Walker in Georgia, Ted Budd in North Carolina, Chuck Morse probably in New Hampshire, Adam Laxalt in Nevada, J.D. Vance in Ohio, Dr. Oz in Pennsylvania, Tiffany Smiley in Washington State, and of course Ron Johnson in Wisconsin, with serious races on their hands. How do you think we come out of those 10 races?
All of those are very serious races. Thanks for highlighting all of them. Those are all areas to be able to focus in on, and for folks to be able to participate in if they choose to be able to do that. We do look good in all of these races. We do have momentum. Unfortunately, we have momentum because Biden is continuing to be able to drive the economy into the ditch. The more he focuses on trying to quote unquote fix the economy, the worse that it seems to get. Latest poll that I saw on Right Track, Wrong Track for the country, 78% of the country now believes we're on the wrong track, which surprises me. There's still 22% of the country out there thinking this looks good. But there's a real pull in the country to say this does not feel right. We need to go a very different direction.
Now, the president scored a couple of wins. The CHIPS Act, he's doing a dance, although that was bipartisan. And, of course, taking out Zawahiri is a grand and good thing. And I give him credit for pulling the trigger. I give Nancy Pelosi credit for going to Taiwan. But we're still stuck with this reconciliation bill. I've explained it this way. We don't know where Senator Sinema is. If they get her and the vice president and everybody on the floor, they can pass this nightmare, it's called the Inflation Reduction Act. Not about inflation, doesn't reduce anything, and it raises taxes and spending. And it's Joe Manchin not acting, it's collapsing. First, what's the story on Senator Sinema? What do we know?
Yeah, we don't know on that. She's been very quiet on it as she's going through it, and she'll make her decision when she makes her decision. But you are correct. They're calling this the Inflation Reduction Act, except the problem is when they actually scored it, it doesn't reduce inflation. They say it reduces deficits as well, except when they scored it, they said it doesn't reduce deficits either. What it does is it increased taxes during a recession, and those taxes specifically hardest hit manufacturers in the United States. So while we have a supply chain issue, they're raising taxes on manufacturing and making it harder for them. It does hire thousands and thousands of new IRS agents to do audits. The focus of there's no focus on the audit. So it's small businesses, people in every income bracket that are out there that they're going after with new IRS agents. It does raise the cost of natural gas, which is going to raise the cost of energy. It does make it harder to be able to develop new drugs. And my favorite piece of it, it literally takes quote unquote savings on the healthcare side from Medicare and takes it out of Medicare, which is already having problems financially, and moves it over to the Affordable Care Act. So it literally takes money from the investment for 76-year-olds and moves it over and gives subsidies to 26-year-olds instead. So there's a lot of problems in this bill that it creates more issues than solves issues.
Now, Senator, I've lobbied Senator Toomey and Senator Cotton on the air, others off the air, that the reconciliation vote-a-rama, if they get Senator Sinema, it proceeds to the floor and there's a vote-a-rama. And usually that means hundreds of votes on symbolic stuff. Could the Republicans get their act together and just stick to 3 or 4 to define the campaign? You know, like nuclear power plant subsidies instead of electric vehicles, expand the Navy, build charter schools, both public and private, and call it infrastructure. But whatever it is, just focus on 3 or 4 things, because the vote-a-rama does not have any political effect in distinguishing the parties.
It does have political effect in the campaign this fall, where you get a chance to put people on record so they can say, I am for XYZ, but when they actually voted, they voted against it. And it gives the opportunity to be able to actually put some things side by side. I'm extremely doubtful that we would have 3 votes on this. I think this is going to be a protracted vote, but I think we're not going to be in the hundreds. I think we're going to be more like 30, 35 or so votes of various topics, whether that be on energy issues, whether it be on healthcare issues, whether it be on immigration. There'll be some key points of differentiation to be able to say, where do people really stand, not what they say, but where they actually vote.
But you'll get Raphael Warnock and Mark Kelly and Patty Murray to all vote the right way on a bunch of symbolic stuff, and then they'll pass the wraparound at the end that reduces all those things. Right? That's what always happens.
Yep, that'll be the real question. That has happened sometimes and has not happened sometimes. So, for instance, Joe Manchin and Kirsten Sinema voted for the wraparound to be able to, quote unquote, cure everything that had been changed, which is really flip it back to what it was originally 2 vote-a-ramas ago. Then the last vote-a-rama that happened on reconciliation, they both rejected that and said, no, we're not going to do that. So the question will be is, for Manchin and Sinema, are they going to vote one way at one moment and then another way at another moment? Or are they going to say, we're not going to do a wraparound to literally vote at one point yes and then one point no an hour later? So we'll see where that actually goes in the days ahead. I don't think either of them have made a decision on what that looks like.
Put me down in the column that 35 amendments is a nightmare. And I know Dan Sullivan's a friend of the show and a good guy, and he wants to do permit reform. That's got no legs in Washington State or in Arizona or Georgia or New Hampshire because people don't understand it. Nuclear plants, they understand. Education. Education's actually, crime and education are the hottest topics other than inflation. Do you agree with me? So you're out there on the campaign trail. You're going to win by 30 points, but you hear what people are talking about. They're talking about crime, inflation, and education.
That is correct. Along that with the price of energy, of course, that goes with inflation, but those are the top things that come up over and over and over again. That's what people want to be able to fix. That's why the energy focus of this is so important, because everything's driven on energy. And you talked about the permitting piece on it. Of course, Joe Manchin is saying he wants to be able to do this inflation bill that raises taxes dramatically, especially on manufacturers, and then also increases dramatic spending. He says on the promise that Schumer and Pelosi have said they will do permitting reform as well. The real issue really is the permitting reform. We're literally voting on a bill that deals with hundreds of billions of dollars in new spending, when really what's needed is the next step, is what Manchin says is coming, and that's permitting reform. If we allow the free market to actually be able to run and not try to be able to control them all the time from D.C., these problems will resolve themselves. But as long as D.C. has its grip around these things, that's going to continue to be the challenge for getting more energy.
Well, Senator, if there's also, in my limited amendments, an amendment barring masking for mandatory masking for schools that receive federal funds, and barring CRT for schools that receive federal funds, or teaching any divisive subject, as how Glenn Youngkin frames it, and Mark Kelly votes against that, he's done. If Raphael Warnock votes against either of those things, he's done. Are those going to make it onto the short list of the short list, I hope?
They have already been on the short list, actually. In previous reconciliations, they've already voted on those things. So those issues are already on the record. Most of the votes that you will see will be areas where people have not voted in the past on it, because other reconciliation bills, they are on the record voting for masking, voting for CRT, voting for all of those things. So, yeah, there'll be multiple new ones. But there'll also be some classics that'll come around just to be able to reinforce.
The classic. I just hope the list is short, because from a perspective of a communicator, the longer the list, the less effective any item on it. Senator, talk to me about what you think inflation and growth will be in October before the election. We got 98 days to the vote, I think, maybe 97. And the CPI is going to go down a little bit because gasoline's coming down a little bit, but the core is going to go up. Where do you think we're going to be in October?
Yeah, I think we're going to be pretty close to where we are right now, 9% inflation. We're going to continue to have supply chain issues. The price of gasoline is going down. The Biden administration is celebrating and say, look, gas prices are coming down. But what they're not saying, and what everybody knows, the reason gas prices are going down, supply is going up because people are driving less. They can no longer afford to be able to drive. They're bundling all their errands together and doing shorter trips or no trips at all to be able to get out. And that is bringing consumption down, which is bringing the price down, basic economics, but it's because people have less money and they can't afford to drive. And so it's bringing that down. So literally the price of gasoline coming down is a result of this bad economy and the recession that's coming.
Senator Lankford, keep coming back. Keep talking to people. I know you're going to win big in Oklahoma, but we got to get these other folks over the line as well. Thank you. Beginning with Ron Johnson in Wisconsin, all the way to Blake Masters in Arizona, W to A and A to W. Welcome back, America. I use this bump for a reason. Because Ari Fleischer is my guest for the next 45 minutes or so. But I love this refrain. Pick it up, Adam. Because when it says boom, 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 that's when I think about Ari's new book, Suppression, Deception, Snobbery, and Bias. Because it says boom, boom, boom. And Ari, you boom, boom, boom the legacy media in this book. Welcome. Good morning.
Good morning. They boom, boom, boom themselves.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. We'll come back with that again, and we'll get the boom, boom, boom payoff. Ari, you and I have been doing a lot of media together ever since you left the Bush White House. We show up, a memorable New Year's Eve show on Sean and Hannity for reasons I won't go into. But we have had, I just agree with everything. And what you've done is put into one book, in Suppression, Deception, Snobbery, and Bias, a compendium of all the fumbles, miscues, intentional mistakes, intellectual dishonesty, and I love snobbery. And how is it being received by our mutual friends in legacy media?
What a great question. I'm proud to report it reached number 6 on Publishers Weekly. It hit number 8 on the Wall Street Journal and 0 on the New York Times. They didn't cover it. They didn't rank it. I'm told it would have been number 5 on the New York Times by the number of sales. But even the news outlets, not the book lists, they won't cover it. They're suppressing it. They're proving
There's your title, Ari. Just use the New York Times. Right? Suppress the existence of the book. Deceive people as to its popularity. Why? Because you're snobbish towards center-right Republicans and you're biased against conservatism. Doesn't that just fit perfectly?
It does, Hugh, but it illustrates the deeper problem of the media. This is why they're in decline. They refuse to look at what they're doing wrong. Any other industry that's been losing so many customers like the mainstream media would say, what's wrong with us? What do we need to do differently? The media instead says, what's wrong with our critics and what's wrong with our customers? And they keep doing the same thing.
Well, I'm going to dive deep into some specifics here, but I want to start with a very specific question. Chris Licht is the new head of CNN. You and I have no ties to CNN. I get along fine with the old boss, Jeff Zucker. He once offered me a job. I turned him down. I once asked him for a job. He turned me down, so we're even. I know you get along with all those people as well, but it's a smoldering wreck of a network. How would you, Ari Fleischer, recommend to Chris Licht that he rebuild his network?
Well, CNN fired Jeff Zucker for a variety of reasons, but Jeff Zucker, the former boss, was the one who pushed them into opinion journalism. They were heading there themselves, many of the reporters, thanks to social media and some of the changes underway, just the way journalists become activists. But then under Trump, Jeff Zucker let it loose and let his anchors and reporters and daytime news reporters fly with their anti-Trump opinions, anti-Republican opinions. Zucker gets fired. They bring in Licht, and I'm fascinated by a potential CNN experiment. Licht has said he wants to return to objective, down-the-middle news. So, 1, does he mean it? And 2, if he does, who will he fire? He's been there 3 months, so you would think he would make his move already. But I can't wait to see if he does it. And if he does, Hugh, is there an economic market for neutral, down-the-middle, old-fashioned, objective journalism, if that's what CNN does?
So, Ari, I think there is a market. I, in fact, am going to invest in John Ellis's News Item Substack, News Items by John Ellis, because that's what he does. It's a morning newsletter that's real news, and I recommend people. I haven't invested yet, but I'm going to. I need news. CNN doesn't do news now, and I would start. I'm not going to talk about who he's going to fire. I would keep Dana Bash and Jamie Gangel. All right, those two people, and there might be others, but I would just say those two have their reputations. Maybe they go a little center left sometime, but they're reporters. Who else would you keep if you're Chris Licht? Start with your lineup that you've got in your minor leagues. Who do you keep?
I think Alison Camerata, one of the anchors, has done her best to resist the push to the far left. She still is a little left. Most of them are. Most reporters are. I think John Berman will play ball. But, the ones it's Don Lemon. It's some of the people who are the most vehement. My book begins with a Don Lemon vignette in which he has 2 guests on his show. And they go from the usual mockery and disdain for Donald Trump to laughing out loud, live on the air about Trump voters. And this is one of the reasons I call it snobbery. The disdain authorized from the top for half this country is what's killing journalism. And people who are pro-life, who hunt, who have guns, they know it.
Yeah. Before Don went hard left, he came out to the Blog World Expo in Las Vegas, and I walked around. He's a good guy, nice guy. But he's not particularly well informed on very basic matters of law and history. And it shows whenever he vamps. And so I finally just put the microphone down, and back when I was working with them but not for them, I said, no more, no mas. I'm not playing with Don Lemon anymore. He doesn't know what he's doing, and it's not professional. They've lost a lot of people to that, not being professional. And being professional means if you have an opinion, don't hide it. I mean, I love transparency. I want to start with thanking you for including the Jane Coaston interview. I was pleasantly surprised to find myself there. But the star of that interview was Jane, and the reason she's quoted in your book is she was honest.
Yep. But she was not honest about giving her opinion about public policy or who should or should not get elected. She was honest describing how far left her colleagues in the media are. And that, to me, was refreshing to hear somebody acknowledge that only maybe 3-5% of the reporters are pro-life, maybe 8% are pro-Israel. You know, it's that kind of snapshot into who goes into reporting in the first place, which is what leads to why the press is so bad and so wrong so often, because you have such a self-selection of what's essentially become college-educated Democrats. That's all they are.
And by the way, your experience at Columbia Journalism School, very similar to mine. When I was called up by Nick Lemon, he wanted to do a profile of me for the New Yorker, and I agreed, but I said, but I get to do a profile for the Weekly Standard back in the days when it was sane. And we agreed, mutual assured destruction. So he came out and spent, a few days with me and wrote this nice long piece in the New Yorker. I went to Columbia Journalism School. They were so left-wing, Ari, and you have the details. How often do you go up there?
I've done it twice, Hugh. I did it a long time ago, 1998, and I did it in 2020. Spoke to 24 students total in 2 classes of 12. And after each time, I said, in the previous presidential elections, did you vote for the Republican or the Democrat for president? And the vote was 24-0 for the Democrat. And how can journalism function when it's so lopsided? And it's not just Columbia. It's virtually every journalism school across the country. And then they graduate into newsrooms that are just like them. One of the studies I put in the book, it's a Pew poll, and it showed that the only group of Americans who thinks that the press understands them are college-educated Democrats.
They are
a Democrat with a high school diploma. You don't think the press understands you. Independents, college, high school, press doesn't understand you. Republicans, press doesn't understand you. Journalism has turned itself into a little narrow ideological cul-de-sac of college-educated Democrats who tell stories and report news for fellow college-educated Democrats. And they're letting the rest of America down.
It's an island from which everyone else has departed, except that demographic. Now, Ari, I want to explain to the audience. I've had the same experience. I used to teach an undergraduate course from my friend Bill Abdel, who was a bigwig for a while at the LA Times. And he would teach undergraduates in journalism class. And those were 200 kids. And I would first divide the class. I'd make them move. If you're pro-choice, go over to the left side of the room. If you're pro-life, go over to the right. There aren't that many. If you own a gun, go to the right side of the room. If you're for removing all AR-15s from the market, go to the left side. I would divide them out. And at the end, you've got the hardest left people on the left, and you got the most conservative people on the right. And I said, okay, will the newspapers be the same every day if the left side of this auditorium produces it or the right side? And everyone agrees right away. Oh, they'll be different. Well, that's actually what's happened. It's self-selection of the left for the left. Or am I wrong?
Exactly. No, you nailed it. And that's one of the big theses of my book. And, one of the ways I prove this, because when I say most reporters are college-educated Democrats, it's not my assumption. It's a fact. I hired an opposition research firm, Hugh, to pull the records, the public records, of the 49 reporters who sit in the 49 seats in the White House briefing room. And they found by a 12-1 ratio, those reporters are registered Democrat to Republican. The New York Times reporter is a registered Democrat. The Los Angeles Times reporter, registered Democrat. Bloomberg, registered Democrat. Both NPR reporters, of course, are Democrats. You know, think about it. The news was 12-1 Republican to Democrat. The information people get would be so different, so profoundly different. And I'll tell you, the biggest difference, Hugh, would be coverage of poverty issues, coverage of the invisible hand of capitalism, lifting people up out of poverty, from lower income to lower middle income, from lower middle to middle. The genius of innovation, entrepreneurship, capitalism, education, all of that would be covered regularly. We'd see so much less coverage of the Green New Deal and global warming. The culture would be different. But just give me a newsroom that's one-to-one, that's balanced.
Yeah,
that's
but
fair,
that,
that's even.
You quoted Jane Coaston. If you'd gone back further in the archive, Tom Edsall came on this show a few years ago, like 15 years ago, said the same thing. 85 to 90% of reporters working in legacy media vote Democrat. If they vote. If they don't vote, that's just a show. And that's,
Right.
I think it's the same. It's gotten worse, perhaps. And when I come back from break, I'm going to ask you again, what would Ari Fleischer do at CNN? We got so much to talk. We got to talk about the Steele dossier. We got to talk about former administration officials who take jobs. We got to talk about the rise of the Free Beacon and the Examiner in opposition to the Washington Post, for whom I work, and the New York Times. We got so much in Ari's book, but I want people to look at it. Suppression, Deception, Snobbery, and Bias. It's put out by Broadside. And Ari, why did you go with the long title?
Because I want to capture what was wrong. And it's a stumbly title. It's hard to memorize, but I have it memorized because I believe it so deeply that these are the things that are killing journalism. And I want journalism to do better. And the way to do better is stop suppressing the news, stop deceiving the voters, be in touch, stop being snobs, and your bias will end.
Yeah, the trouble with cliffs is if you keep going towards them, Thelma and Louise style, you eventually go over them. I think they've gone over the cliff. Now, I look for ratings whenever I can. I want to see who's winning the Sunday shows, who's declining over here. Why is it so hard to find TV ratings when they're so obviously available to TV executives?
Yeah, I do get the ratings. I look at them. Because the sad truth for mainstream media is conservative media is booming in terms of how people vote with their remotes and their eyeballs. And mainstream media is in decline in terms of viewership and profitability. So again, I'm trying to save journalism by exposing what's wrong with it because I have tremendous respect for the fourth pillar. We need it in our democracy. But today's mainstream media ain't it. They're part of the problem that divides America. So I have a solution in the book, but the mainstream media has done this to itself. They're losing customers, losing money, losing business because they will not change.
When
and
I
Donald
come
Trump
back,
played a part too.
we're going to talk about Donald Trump.
Lose their minds.
Yeah, he did. We're going to talk about TDS. We're mostly going to talk, though, about CNN and what Ari would do to save it, and about the Steele dossier and the Mueller investigation. Because if there is one overarching theme in Ari's book, it's the failure of the media during the Trump administration, personified by Christopher Steele. It's so detailed. It is all in this book: Suppression, Deception, Snobbery, and Bias. The single best book on the media I've read in 20 years. Go and get it during the break. I'll be back with Ari Fleischer, Saving CNN, next. Boom, boom, boom. That's what Ari Fleischer does in his brand new book, Suppression, Deception, Snobbery, and Bias. This book is available at Amazon.com right now. It is flying off the shelves by people who are interested in saving the media and understanding what has happened to it, legacy media. Ari, I'm very serious. When Jeff ran CNN, people tried to please Jeff. When Andy Lake ran NBC, people tried to please Andy Lake. People will try and please Chris Lick now. I don't know if anyone will tell him the truth, but he'll have the numbers. What would you program? How would you program CNN? And not generally, but specifically. I have my list of people I'd hire over there. Who would you hire over there?
I don't know who I would hire. I know who I would get rid of, or I would tell them you need to change. I'd start with John Harwood, their so-called White House correspondent, who is really in the tank for the Democrats. Jim Acosta, of course, who was rewarded with his own TV show for his bias. What I would do is go back to the 90s at CNN. What made them famous? Straight down the middle, objective, we're there, you're not. We'll tell you what happened, reporting. CNN has a massive staff. They still have lots of bureaus and lots of places around the world. And that's why I like journalism. I'm not everywhere. I'm not there. If someone is there and they're called a reporter, just tell me, the viewer, the reader, what happened. I'll tell you what it means. All the American people will tell you what it means. Don't tell me what it means. So my approach to journalism and to CNN specific is get back to what makes journalism valuable to all of us.
Well, you know, the trouble, Ari, is that monetization of that is very difficult because it's faster to read the news than it is to watch the news. So if you want to watch the news, you've got to want to watch Ari Fleischer, who's very good on TV. I would go out and I would hire Mary Catherine Ham, who's already a CNN person, give her a show. I'd go steal Guy Benson and give him a show. I'd get Sungmin Kim, give her a show. I'd get Jake Sherman. I'd get Pentagon reporters, by the way. I think Pentagon reporters like Carol Lee and Courtney Kuby are just extraordinary because they're smart and they know stuff. That's why Brett Baer's such a good anchor. He's a Pentagon reporter beforehand. And I don't mind if they're a little bit left or a little bit right. I just mind the people who are out and out, always left, and can't say a good thing ever about anyone on their other side.
Yeah, and I'm just loath to get into who they should hire. I've never tried to tell anybody in the private sector who to hire, what to do in that sense. I look at this as a structural problem CNN has because they encourage their anchors and their reporters to constantly give anti-Trump opinions live on the air, and it undermined them. And it didn't even really help them with their liberal base. There was a story yesterday in the New York Times about CNN's ratings and viewing. Their revenues are below $1 billion for the first time in I think it was 20 years. They're in trouble.
Would you go back to a Crossfire model? That was a successful show until Jon Stewart blew it up.
Yes, I would. It's a fascinating trend. One of the chapters in my book is the way it was, and I trace why journalism has run to its various niches. And I do like more balance on shows, left-right points of view from guests, not reporters and not anchors. But what happens is you've got to pick your guests with care. If you pick your guests because they're the most flamboyant shouters in society, well, then, yeah, you've got a real noisy show and maybe it'll entertain. But if you pick your guests who are smart, knowledgeable, fair-minded, they don't challenge the motives of the other side, they respect people, boy, does that lift up our country. And I think that can be good viewership. And, economically, Hugh, the pendulum swings. People have run to their niches right now across the media, but that doesn't mean it stays that way forever. I think people get tired. I hear it all the time. People say, where can I go to get objective down-the-middle news? And I've got to tell you, the daytime shows on Fox are so much more fair, and the daytime anchors and reporters are so much more fair than CNN's.
Well, Brett is now America's anchor.
Fair.
I think Brett is America's anchor. I think he's the last trustworthy anchor in America. I got to play for you now. MSNBC, everyone in this audience, I work for them. I had the lowest rated show in the history of MSNBC because they put it on 7:30 in the morning on Saturday after an infomercial. They were really invested in the success of that, weren't they? So anyway, Ellie Meistel goes on MSNBC with Tiffany Cross. I don't know Meistel. I don't know Cross. They're both post-Hewitt years at NBC. But this was on this week, Ari, cut number one.
Yeah, first of all, I just want to thank the GOP for nominating a running back from Dallas to run in Georgia and a TV doctor from New Jersey to run in Pennsylvania. Thank you guys, right?
Yes.
But yes, it's going to be a close election in Georgia because Walker has the backing of the Republicans. Now you ask, why are Republicans backing this man who's so clearly unintelligent, who so clearly doesn't have independent thoughts? But that's actually the reason. Walker's going to do what he's told. And that's what Republicans like. That's what Republicans want from their Negroes, to do what they're told.
All right, Ari, first react to that comment.
Oh, I wish you could have seen my face. When he says doesn't have independent thought, Democrats define independent thought as you all have to be Democrats if you're black.
Right.
I mean, isn't that the very definition?
It's an insult. But that House Negro stuff, it's just racist.
Yeah.
It's just racist. And I would never let that guy on my network again. But in fact, MSNBC is playing to a very narrow demographic. They need their 2 million people a night. And their 2 million people are overwhelmingly hard left and or reliably Democratic voters. And they've just given up. Rachel Maddow runs that network now, and she wants that stuff.
And where's the New York Times and the Washington Post calling out that clip? Another example that was in my book is when Senator Tim Scott, Republican senator from
Yes.
South Carolina, African-American, responded to President Biden's national address. He was asked by Republicans to give the national rebuttal. A Democratic county chairman in Texas called him an Oreo. Did the New York Times cover it? No. Did the networks cover it? No. Now, I have examples in my book, properly so, the New York Times calling out obscure state legislators in Florida and Ohio who used inappropriate language in talking about blacks. And I was glad the New York Times called them out on it because no one should talk like that. But then they give a pass to the Democrat county chairman who calls Scott an Oreo? And you just showed another example. This is part of the problem when you have reporters who are all cut from the same Democrat cloth. They sweep the Democrat statements under the rug. They go after only